Okay, good morning. That was half of you. Good morning. If you could stand where I'm standing, you would say, wow, 500 people in one room celebrating sales and success. If you'd asked me this 20 years ago, I never would have dreamed this was possible. Now, don't take today for granted. You're investing one day of your life. We're only given a handful of days, and you're investing one of those days today, so make the most of today. Pay close attention. Laura talked about taking notes. So here's some interesting facts. If we had assembled a group of 500 people just randomly from the area, 500 people, only 15 would take notes today. That's 3%. We call those people? No, the 3%ers. I said it was 3%. You're like my wife. Can't do that. Okay, good. 3%. Only 15 people would bother to take notes. The other 485 couldn't be bothered. They see no value in it. And they would walk away thinking that they're good enough, they know enough, and they don't. Now, more interestingly to me is the 5 of those 15 who would actually do something with those notes. And we call those the 1%ers. 1%. But I'm glad today we don't have just a cross-section of people. We've got only top performers here, and I'm sure that you're the kind of person who takes their life seriously, that you take your job seriously, that you have responsibilities to yourself and your family to be the very best. So take great notes. Don't let it get away from you today. Interesting story. A couple weeks ago, I had a great management interview with a young lady, and it was just a great conversation. I mean, she had it. She was smart. She was articulate. She had energy. You could tell she had passion. She was so happy to be interviewed for the position, and it was one of the best interviews I've had in a long time. And during the conversation, she looked at me and she looked around the room and she said, you look like a reader because you've got a lot of books in here. And I got my Kevin grin because she fell for my trap. Now, if you don't know me too well, in kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Craigie from St. John's Lutheran in Fraser, Michigan, on the very first day of school said to my mother, I got to keep an eye on this one because he's got a baby face and he's got the devil in his eye, and that to me is trouble. And so I have this grin, and we all have this grin, but she fell into my trap because now it gave me permission to give her my presentation on being a reader, or not being a reader, on being a student, and the importance of studying. You see, readers read, and they go on to the next book, and they don't get it. And when they go to the next book, and the next book, and the next book, they can't remember what the first book was. They don't incorporate it in the learnings. You have to study the book. And so she got my 10 to 12-minute speech on being a student. So we continued the conversation, and it went pretty well. And at the end, I always like to give people the opportunity to ask any closing questions, and she was no different. So I said, do you have any more questions? Well, she stole my Kevy grin because I think she thought she had me stumped. And she goes, well, Mr. Gilfillan, you've got a lot of books here you've studied, which I loved because it showed she paid attention. And then I took my grin back because I'm thinking, I know what you're going to ask me. You're going to ask me, which book should I study first? But then she stole my grin back and said, of all the topics you have on your shelves, you've got books on sales and leadership, books on communication, health, philosophy. What do you think is the greatest subject to study? And I go, whoa, no one's ever asked me that question. But I took my grin back because I have the answer. I'm glad you like that. And here it is. Study words. Words are what we do, and it's not just in our business. In sales, words are everything. There are tools. How we say things, what we say, when we say them, the timing, the energy we put in those words are key. It's written, "A pen is mightier than the sword," which means that words are more powerful than weapons. Words can build and words can destroy. And we have to be so careful to study words. Interesting fact, we use about 10% of our brain. And look at the amazing things mankind can accomplish with only 10% of our brain. Well, here's kind of a unusual correlation. I did a little research on this. How many words do you think there are in the English language? Anybody got a guess? 100,000. That was my guess too. If you Google it when you go home, just because you might think he makes stuff up, because I do make stuff up, but if you Google it, you'll find out there's over 1,025,000 words in the English letters. That's one in the English language. That's 1,025,000. 1,025,000. Now, how many words do you think the average person knows and uses on a daily basis? 50,000. How much? 1,000, 10,000. The number is about 12,000. Now, depending on who you ask, there's a lot of variances, but we'll go with 12,000. It's 1% of the words available we use. Now, if we could go from 1% to 2%, what would that do to our sales? What would it do to our relationships? What would it do to our family? What would it do to ourselves? And so be a student of words, but more importantly, study language. How do you use those words? I'll give you an example. If you're a parent, you say to your child, "What's wrong with you?" But what you really meant to say is, "What's troubling you?" You see, you can't make that mistake. You can make it, but don't make it for 18 years. You see, when you tell your child over and over and over, "What's wrong with you?" you're saying you're defective. You're saying you're less. You're saying that there's something not quite right. And where does that put their mental state for success? How do they see themselves? What's their self-image? What's their confidence like? When you make that mistake in language, it has catastrophic outcomes. So language is almost godlike. You know, it's written, page 1, verse 3, "And God spoke and said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light," meaning that the Word of God can create light. We can be godlike with our language because there's all sorts of light. Sight is a form of light, and we can create vision with our words and our language. We can help the blind to see. So let's take a look at that real quick. If you were to know someone who was struggling with their life or with their sales, with their career, they just couldn't see, they were blind to possibility. And you started to carefully and with craft tell them your story about how you've overcome obstacles, how you've beat challenges, how you've built a successful life, how you overcome difficulty or loss. And through your careful crafting of language, you're able to convey to them in a way that inspires. And as you speak to them, you can see their face start to brighten. Maybe they get the twinkle back in their eye. And you get done with your story, and they say to you, "Wow, thank you. It was like I was in the dark. I couldn't see a way. But as you spoke, some things started to dawn on me." There's an interesting one. Some things started to dawn on me. It was like the sun was coming up, and the more you spoke, the brighter the ideas got. And I can now see a different path. There's no greater achievement you can have into helping somebody else see what they can't see. And the only way you can do that is through our words and through our language and studying those two things. It's also written that words are like a lamp for our feet, so we can see the next step. They're like a beacon to our path, so we can see where to go. And so be a student of words, be a student of language. Understand that how we say, what we say, when we say is the key to our relationships with our family, our children, our relatives, our neighbors, our co-workers, and in sales, our customers, because we can build images through our words that help them see our furniture in their home, making memories like Laura talked about. And they can see that our van is the place to be. We create that vision through our language. So a good question for you might be, excuse me, how do you study words? How do you study language? Well, the best way I know how is by studying books and listening to books on audio. Because when you see the words, you're actually building an inventory of words. You're going to see words that you've never seen before. You'll hear words you've never heard before, and you will expand that vocabulary from 12,000 to 15,000 to 20,000. You'll see how sentences are structured. You know, we don't send kids at the age of 2 to school to learn English. They learn language by paying attention. Our mind has the capacity to put things together. And so when we read books, when we listen to them, our mind is starting to become more articulate with language. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And so my challenge today for you in 2015 is, as you decide to build your greatest year ever in 2015, I would argue that your greatest opportunity for growth is the study of words and the study of language, how to build pictures in customers' minds, in your relationships with your family members, how to build images that inspire and motivate them to be the best that they are. Now, I like audiobooks a lot because I think I get everything out of it. I get the words, I get the sentence structure, I get the topic, obviously, but I also get the presentation. Because when you listen to a book on audio, you get to hear presentation, and you get to hear how people change the tone, change the rate of speed, pause for dramatic effect. I used to get upset because some audiobooks, the readers were just terrible. And usually they were the writer reading the book themselves. And I always want to call a writer and say, you know, you're a really good writer, but you ain't a good speaker, so give it to somebody else. But I learned quickly that better to listen to a bad book or a book written or read improperly and learn from that, because you learn as much as you do from a good presentation as you do from a bad if you pay attention. And so have a conscious awareness of the study of words, the study of language, so that you can build a 2015 like no other. Last piece for me today. You don't know this, but I am able to predict the future. I am the reincarnation of Nostradamus, and I will now, for you, predict 2015. 2015 will be a year like no other year. You will have more opportunity than you've ever had in the history of mankind. You will have more challenges, more disappointments, more victories, more losses, more sadness, more happiness, more joy, more sorrow, more frustration, more challenge, more ease. It will be a year like no other. The difference is what you make of it. You see, what happens to you in 2015 will happen to us all. It's an interesting fact that two people in the same situation, one gets rich, one stays poor. It's not the situation, it's what you do with the situation that changes everything. And so 2015 will be your best year if today you'll just decide and commit to do the things that you need to do to make that happen. And you will make it happen if you decide. Last piece I have is this. Thank you. Mr. Van said thank you. We will thank you a lot today. I want you to know a couple things. We know what you do. We've done it. We've been there. We know this is not an easy job, but there is no easy job. When you really think about it, they're all tough. And you're tough, and you make us better than we are. I guarantee you there is not a furniture company with a room like this today and they would give their left arm to be here and to be part of this team. You make me better, and I am so proud to be a member of your team, and I'm committed to being the best I can be because you make me that way. And so from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you, and I wish you all God's blessing in 2015. Have a great day.